go to this. Okay. So we are looking at the Karma Kanda. That is the first 6 chapters, selections from the first 6 chapters. I have selected 18 slokas from the first 6 chapters, and out of which the first 6, which covers verses from the first and second chapters only, summarizing the message of what is the real self. We talked about that in the last session. Then the next point is about working selflessly with equanimity of mind and dexterity of skills. And then the importance of giving up selfish desires and anger is talked about. And why that is required? Because anger leads to delusion. So this is the cryptic summary of what message that is conveyed through the first 6 slokas that I have selected. So we looked at, in general, on an overall perspective, we looked at what Gita intelligence is all about. The wisdom of Bhagavad-Gita that we can apply in the real life is basically, we have to understand that in a very simplistic manner, and actually it is practical, even though it is simplistic. It is very simple, but it is very practical summary of the Gita intelligence is that the self, the Atman. The Atman is all about the power of selflessness. The power within us that helps us to unleash a selflessness from within us is the true representation or manifestation of the self, the Brahman inside us. The more details are thrown open in the 3rd chapter, but self is within us as selflessness. If we do not work selflessly, then we are not reflecting the Atman. When we are starting to think selflessly, and it is not, I'm not also advocating that everyone should be completely selfless. It is that, yes, we have to approach that state. That is the purpose of life. So it is not that the beginning itself you are selfless. Yes, it is a difficult path to trudge, and it is also not very easy to comprehend. So we have to go step by step. And that is what Krishna advocated to Arjuna also. And you can see that along the full path of Bhagavad Gita, 700 slokas, 18 chapters, slowly he is enumerating practical strategies with which you can actually shun selfishness. So selflessness is the true reflection, and that selflessness, when it is pulsating in our thoughts, in our mind, then your mind will become refined with supreme motivations. That supreme motivations is what is basically called as the bhakti within us. That bhakti is the state of supreme motivations in us. It is a state of inspiration. We are completely in tune with the self. To reach that state, to be in that state is the process of bhakti and the state of the bhakta. So it is a refinement of the intellect. And for that intellect to reach that state of bhakti, what is required is the emotions, the feelings, the mind. The mind has to be equanimous, balanced. It should not give in to extremes of emotions, anger, and actually pleasure and hatred, or pleasure and pain, and sorrows and happiness. You should not be swinging between them, because life is a mixture of both, and you should be able to accept what comes to your life. So that is equanimity, that state of equanimity. And with this kind of motivations and equanimity, if we are able to engage in thought processes as well as then translate the thoughts into actions, the actions would become better and better. You will be able to see the progress that you make in your actions, therefore increasing the dexterity of skills. So it is equanimity of mind will lead you to dexterity of skills. Supreme motivations will lead you to equanimity of mind. Equanimity of mind will lead you to dexterity. This is the message. This is the message of Gita intelligence. So Now, the rest of the chapters from 2 to 18, almost 700 slokas, are details. Details of how you would actually translate this message, this wisdom into action plan. So, obviously, it is not one or two or three or four bullets of things that you can. It is hundreds of bullets. And that doesn't mean that it is difficult. It is difficult when you look at it and then start wondering how I am able to, bring all these hundreds of bullets into my life. It is not that way. You have to start small and then start practicing consistently and persistently go about doing it. It becomes habit. Brain is also the tool with which we are actually doing all this. Therefore, we have to follow the policy of the brain. What is the policy of the brain? The policy of the brain is consistency and persistence. There is only two words that the brain understands, nothing else. You can think of anything, but nothing. The brain does not understand any of those things. The only two things that the brain understands is consistency and persistence. So that is basically what Krishna was telling Arjuna, that whatever you want to achieve, whatever you want to do, you have to be consistent with it and you have to persist with failures and successes. If you fail, don't give up. Go forward and keep doing that. Be consistent in your approach. And then it is not that, I have certain likes and those things that I like, I will persist with and be consistent. Those things I do not like, I will not be consistent and persist with, means that you cannot achieve. So whether you like it or not, you have to follow this policy. And now Krishna then prescribes how actually you should actually find out what you should like and what you should not dislike, etc. So the sense of duty and sense of attitudes and all this come into play. That is how it builds. The Gita builds through chapter 3, 4, etc. It keeps on building because we are talking about human beings. The human mind is such a complex species on earth. And obviously, therefore, the solutions to the problems faced by mankind is not simple because the problems are not simple. And therefore, we need to be consistent, persistent in what we are trying to understand from the Gita intelligence. And that is basically what we are trying to do. So, we initially looked at the definition of self and the characteristics of self that we can actually perceive and we should actually understand. So that is basically what we did, and for that we looked at the Vedanta concepts of the real and the unreal. Self is the only thing that is real, Vedanta says, and what is it that we understand from that statement is basically what we discussed in the last session, mainly that something that is real is only something that is actually real is only the self. Self is the only thing that is real. The rest of it all unreal. When you say real and unreal, it is not the things that come as a result of magic, etc. is unreal. No, it's not that conventional, traditional, materialistic viewpoint in the transactional world. It is the real definition of real and unreal is basically what Gita is talking about, Vedanta is talking about. It is about things that are present in this world. All three time frames of the past, present, the future only is real. The rest, everything else, if it is only in two of them or in one of them, it is unreal because it is fleeting, it is transient. Transient things are not real. The only thing that is not transient, which is permanent, it is eternal, is the self. That is what Krishna defined. And he gave a definition, a kind of theorem for describing the nature of the self. That is one of the most important slokas at the beginning of Bhagavad-Gita, which is the unreal has no being. Unreal things do not exist at all. They do not have any being. And similarly, real things can never be not present. It will always be there. So there is no non-being of the real. That is the fundamental theorem that defines self. Understanding that is basically what self-knowledge is all about. Atmajnanam is all about understanding this one-liner. Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha. The unreal has no being and there is no non-being of the real. If you try to understand this, you have understood everything. And making us understand that is the essence of Bhagavad Gita, the wisdom. The essence of Bhagavad Gita, wisdom of Bhagavad Gita, if you can say in one statement, that is the unreal as no being, there is no non-being of the real. Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satha. That is the point at which Krishna starts the discourse. And therefore, it looks that it is very complex. It is very complex and abstract, difficult to conceive. Naturally, Krishna knew that. So he just actually, he just put down the bomb initially and it exploded. And now he is telling everyone, let us discuss that in detail. And that's basically what is going to happen from chapter 3 onwards. Okay, so self is eternal and self is infinite is the message that is initially given to us. Therefore, we have to carry out our duties in this life with selflessness, equanimity, and dexterity to the best of our belief, faith, etc. in our own infinite self. That we do not have any existence other than the self, and I am the self. That understanding is basically what you need to know. And initially, it is better to accept that in faith, and then we will try to understand it. Bolts level understanding of the nuts and bolts level knowledge that will imbibe us with the actual experience of the self. So we looked at it that this is something that we had looked at in the previous class. So it's about the self is manifesting through us and everywhere around us as the power for every living species to, especially when we talk about human beings more, because we are able to speak in our own language only, and therefore we are speaking about human beings. In fact, even a cat, even a dog, even a stone is able to do the same thing, but they cannot express. So we don't know. We don't want to worry about that. Whereas human beings, we know this, we can express this, and we can also convey this through communication. And therefore, we are talking about ourselves. Self-reference is the first power of self that exhibits within all of us, is that power of self-reference. The moment we are a separate entity, physical entity that we think we are, immediately we are endowed with that power of the self. What is that? I, mine. That feeling comes into us. That is the first, what you call, reflection of infinitude or the self within us. So self. When I say self, it is I. That self. And when Krishna says self, it's the same self that we are talking about. So I and you and Krishna, talking to Arjuna, are all referring to Maya Tathamidam Sarvam. We'll look at that later on, that those slogas, the descriptions come. So self-reference, I and mine. Then the first thing. And then again, it starts becoming more and more materialistic. That power of the self. First, I. The feeling of I, it is very difficult for every one of us to describe what is that feeling of I. In fact, science is also still grappling with that self-reference. And trying to understand who am I, the self-reference. And some books I've read about, talking about it as the infinite loop, the strange loop, the infinite loop. So many things have been written about it. The next, that which is difficult, and the next we will actually start feeling, we'll start understanding. A little bit more concrete it becomes, that power, translating it into the material objects, the power now blessing the material objects with more and more materialistic physical powers, which is one of them is mind's perception. The power with which the mind is able to perceive, it becomes that, mind's perception. And then also mind's compassion that it can allow for, to equate, to have empathy with others, other things. Mind's abundance, the positive feelings that we all feel sometimes, is that power reflecting through us, because it is Satchidananda, bliss, absolute. And that is now working through us to give us physical happiness also. Mind's abundance. And then, of course, is the power of knowledge, the power of memories, the power of knowledge and power of memories. Again, it is a kind of energy that is working through our brains, energy systems. Working through our brains is basically what knowledge and memory is all about. And then more physical, metabolic powers. digestive powers, energy systems, ATP, and all those things, conversion of energy into energy, physical energies that manifest in the physical world. So self is now getting more and more concrete and showing it. But the moment it starts becoming concrete, it becomes also that what it gives the power, yes, the energy, that power, that is infinite. But when it is working through the material processes, the material things have only limited span, and then it goes off. So the physical body, the physical mind, etc., will not last. That is all. So it is exhibiting through that physical things, which is not real. Mind's perception, mind's compassion, mind's abundance, power of knowledge, power of memory, metabolism, and digestion. All these are again further described down the line in various chapters. We'll touch upon those things as it comes. And then the fundamental definition of, some fundamental definitions we need to be aware of. That is the infinite from the infinite emerged, or from within the infinite emerged the universe, universal, which the universe with all the manifested physical nature. And we have the guiding principles behind names and forms. Nama Rupa. All this happened because of materialization. And the powers that made the forms and the names, that is the universal self. That is Ishvara, the Lord that presides over the universe. So it was given, as the name was given as the Lord, that actually presides over everything physical, which with its functioning, etc. That is therefore named as the Lord, or in Sanskrit, Ishvara. And that Ishvara started reflecting within each one of us as the life, giving us these powers which we talked about, Nasade, Vidyate, Abhav, etc. That self, as the self, the Atman. The Atman. So there is Brahman, Ishvara, and Atman. There is no difference between these terms. It is only in the way we refer to the infinitude from three different perspectives. The infinite from two other perspectives, which is the universal, Ishvara, and as the individual, the Atman. So the Brahman, Ishvara, and the Jiva pattern is, again, it is a kind of, one within the other, replicating exactly the same things, like this diagram which is shown there, triangles, within a triangle, within a triangle, within a triangle, kind of a recursive structure. So therefore, understanding the infinitude is one of the things that Gita advocates. And for that, we need to start believing that, and then initially reflect on it consistently. And how do you actually practically benefit from such knowledge? Is that we need to understand this, and we need to accept life as it is, and with all the problems, as well as the goodness that comes out of it, and as negatives and positives, life and death and all those. So therefore, it is for your own good that you should not be holding on to sorrow. Because, sorrows and happiness you have to shun, but happiness is your nature, true, very nature, Sat Chit Ananda. And therefore, you cannot give up happiness. You should not give up happiness. You should try to give up sorrows. It will come, but giving it up is something, sorrows and happinesses will definitely come to us. It is how your mind connects with those happinesses and sorrows that matters. So sorrows will be there, but you should not connect with it. Happiness, you are happiness. Therefore, there is nothing wrong in connecting with that. But sorrows, don't connect. You understand, not to hold on to the sorrows is the sign of wisdom that we need to develop. Is basically what the essence of the message is. So now let's go ahead a little bit further today. Let's look at Satchidananda, or existence, consciousness, and bliss, are the fundamental nature of Brahman, the infinite self. Existence, knowledge, bliss. Sat, Chit, Ananda. It is actually, this infinitude contains everything that ever existed, will exist, and which is existing now. So which existed, is existing now, and will ever exist. So it is infinitude, it is everything. And therefore, it is energy and matter all combined within that infinitude. Everything is there. Energy, the energy principle, but we should understand that the energy principle is infinite, infinitude. That is infinitude. Infinity is the measure of that energy. And there is, within that infinitude, there is this materiality principle, that which is able to come forth as matter. So potential matter is already there in that energy. And that potential matter has got a beautiful capability, What is that? It is multitude. It is not infinitude, it is within that infinitude, but it has got the power of multitude. That is, it can become multiple things. That is the wonderful thing about it. So, this infinite energy principle is called as the Purusha. And the multiple or the multitudinous of materiality principle is called as the Prakriti, nature, in Sanskrit. The Purusha and the Prakriti. And what is happening is, when this universe evolved, this is what has happened. The Purusha and the Prakriti combined, expressed itself. Purusha and Prakriti expressed itself through a combination. How did it express? Through the nature exhibiting with the energy into the outside world as knowledge, ignorance, and projection. The power of knowledge, the power of ignorance, and the power of projection. The gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamo gunas, which ultimately Bhagavad-Gita says in chapter 10 as vibhutis, virtues, the self, expressing, manifesting within our minds as virtues, fame, wealth, graciousness, memory, meaningful retention, fortitude, and forgiveness. Or in Sanskrit, Kirti, Shri, Vak, Smriti, Medha, Dridhi, and Kshama. We will look at this further in the 10th chapter when we reach that point. But now, for the time being, we should understand that these virtues emerged because of the materiality principle. And these virtues are Prakriti's virtues. That is what you should know. Therefore, they are called in Gita, Upanishads, as feminine virtues. They are feminine virtues, multitude of virtues, because of the materiality principle which is rooted in multitude. And it is not infinite, it is all restricted. And that is the material feminine virtues that we have inherited, and whether it is for us to now exhibit it. Or we can say this actually a little bit more elaborated. We can say these are reflected in the minds of people as determination, austerities, serenity and purity, creativity and cognition, willpower, courageous conscience, dispassion, intelligence, and perfection. The multitude, one, the many, one and the many. The one, infinite, energizing the many, and that many is expressing through our minds as this, and then we are reflecting infinitude. Instead, we can also reflect their opposite things because of ego. That's a different story. That is what we will see as we progress. But this is how we are reflecting the infinitude into the outside world. And this is what we should understand as this. This is the message of the Navarathri also. The Navadurgas. This Navadurgas is nothing but this mental aspects of determination, austerity, serenity, creativity, willpower, conscience, dispassion, intelligence, and perfection is the Prakriti which is blessing our minds. The Prakriti that is blessing our minds in multitude of forms. But the self is only one. There is only one. There is no different characteristics for the Purusha. Only for the Prakriti we have multiple forms, multiple names, multiple devatas. It exhibits like that as 9. And, each one of these things are actually reflected upon And the practice of reflecting upon each one of these mental aspects, the powers of the bhavas of the Devi, the Prakriti, divinity within us, Prakriti, reflecting on each one of them, day one, day two, day three, that is Navaratri. 9 nights of reflection on these 9 aspects of the Devi within us. So we see how that has happened. That is basically because of this materiality principle. When it is energized by that infinite energy principle, the Purusha, the Prakriti starts exhibiting itself as knowledge, ignorance, and projection, which as virtues, which are reflected as virtues in our intellect and reflected in our minds as determination, austerity, serenity, purity, creativity, willpower, and all those 9 things, the 9 things. Try to develop, reflect on these things, and then do whatever you can to develop each one of these. Spend 1 night each for that is a symbolization of Navaratri. And it so happens that especially in the southern parts and mostly in Kerala, as you know, as a joke, we'll say this nine is not possible for Kerala. So we actually reduced it to 3. What is that? That is the first 3. 1, 2, and 3. Firm determination to ward off negative tendencies and become pure and peaceful. We started worshipping it as Durga only the last 3 days of the 10 days, no, and 9 nights. So first day is representing the 3 days, 3 previous 9. Those people who celebrate it as Navaratri, for us it is 3. That one represents 3, which is this, as Durga Devi. The next 3, the next stage, thoughtful and creative, putting in self-effort and exhibiting fearlessness, purity, and steadfastness, courageous conscience. Lakshmi, that brings us the wealth of capabilities. Lakshmi Devi. Therefore, it is Lakshmi Devi. Why is the previous one Durga? Firm determination to ward off negative tendencies is that power within us, which is the Durga's power, which kills negativity. All the bad things is killed with that kind of a mental, what you call bhava. With the mental bhava of firm and determination, firmness and determination, dhruva, determination, the negatives. Only through that we can kill negativities. And that is the power of Durga within us. So that is Durga Devi. Durga represented as that power which kills evil. And then, after the evil is killed, negativities are thrown off. What happens is that we have a fertile mind which can actually cultivate the various kinds of capabilities, the wealth of devas within us. That is Lakshmi Devi, the wealth, the goddess of wealth, Lakshmi Devi. And ultimately with this, negativity is killed and the wealth, capabilities developed, we can now go towards the peak of knowledge, wisdom, dispassionate application of strategic intelligence to rise to perfection in knowledge and wisdom. And then emerge victorious on the 10th day, Vijayadashami. Goddess Saraswati is representative of this. So this is how the Navaratri is, significance of Navaratri is enumerated in our Upanishads. And this is something which actually we don't look at in detail. We all of us get into the celebration part of it, and then we limit ourselves to only celebrations. That is probably our problem. I mean, in the sense, I think our youngsters and youth, children, etc., should actually imbibe the values that have actually helped us design these kind of festivities. We should not get just lost on only festivities, but we should understand the design process. How did we arrive at these things? This is because of the knowledge that our philosophical heritage throws open to us. And we, to make it easier to understand, we symbolized it. We visualized it. We symbolized it. We gave. That is the power of Sanatana Dharma. But it is the power of our, religious philosophical heritage, is that we give visualization to these things, these powers, which becomes easier for the mind to grapple with. It is a wonderful cognitive strategy that have evolved through our philosophers, and even the new systems of learning, etc., is actually trying to imbibe these kinds of strategies for better understanding of conceptual knowledge and connectivity with that concept. So it is a cognitive strategy that 5,000 years back or 3,000 years back we have applied it, and we have devised these systems and given it to us. So as youngsters, they should understand why we have idols, why we worship idols. It is not, it is not something that people can make fun of. Absolutely no. There is nothing wrong in idol worship, because the idol worship has a principle. Only thing is that we should understand why, and if we are able to imbibe that meaning and knowledge, and then live this life based on that knowledge instead of just the rituals, there is definitely value to that, and people will start seeing why we have that, and then they will understand what is the difficulty in other people's thought processes when they don't have such a tool. Now in the modern world, especially in higher studies and in research and innovation, creativity, and all, I've seen that the importance of visual spatial thinking is emphasized very much. In fact, our the youth and the children and the researchers and all, they actually resort to this visual spatial thinking mode to give strength to the logical analytical processes. So logical thinking, analytical thinking, quantitative thinking, fundamental things that we in India also we give emphasis on that, which is good. But we have to put the cement to make it strong, stick together and create a structure that is strong. For that, visual and spatial thinking are very much required. This visual spatial thinking is not given importance in our curriculum. That is a problem. If we do that, the structure that emerges will be strong. The cement of visual and spatial thinking is basically a cognitive process, and this is basically the logic that was applied in making people understand the concepts of philosophical rigor of our olden days. The same process, and we can actually learn from that, and we can start putting that into practice in our other learnings also, and then we will see this wonderful connection with knowledge happening. So this is basically, okay, the Navarathri's concept, which I think I wanted to also talk upon here. Let's go forward now. So we have, we are looking at self in the last session, and that self is now, understood in practical senses in this fashion. We can enjoy this Navaratri period also with these thoughts. So we started off with that, and then let's now go ahead. We looked at we are going to look at the karma, the law of karma theory in the second chapter. After the self was enunciated, Krishna went on to describe the concept of karma. So this concept of karma will be elaborated more in chapters 3 to 6 later on, in about 200 slokas. But prior to that, as a second chapter, a few slokas are now elaborating to us the concept of karma yoga in a nutshell. So we have selected a few slokas from there, which is the crux of it. And in fact, you can say the whole principle of karma yoga, the law of karma, is captured in 3 verses. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma bhaleshu kadajanaha ma karma balahedu, that is 247 and 248 and 250. So we look at that now. 247, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma bhaleshu kadajanaha. That sloka is a very famous sloka which everybody quotes. Whenever we talk about what is karma yoga and how you should work, this sloka comes out. And I think we should look at it from all perspectives to understand it in a much more detailed manner. Let's look at that. you have this particular verse is describing the law of karma, and we can describe it in this fashion. You have authority only to carry out your duties, but no authority over the results. Authority, okay? That is basically what it is. Not that, you should not you should not be looking at the results. You don't have authority. You do not, have any right on the, people talk about you do not have any right on the results. Actually, right is not the correct word. That's why, I have used the word authority. In fact, there are some people who have actually discussed about this also previously. So it's not something that I am talking about as an original thing. It is a fundamental principle that it is not about it is authority. We are talking about the inner mind's authority about doing certain things. Otherwise, we'll go into a tailspin which says that, okay, I should not be looking at the results. I should not work for results, and therefore, why should I work? Those kind of negative things will come in. It is about the authority that we have in carrying out our duties, and also in the results that comes out of that. I don't have any authority on the results. The fruits of the work, therefore, because you do not have authority on what the results of your action should be, you should therefore not be motivated by the results. And just because you should not be motivated by the results, because you do not have any authority over the results, doesn't mean that you should be idle. So that is the total meaning of these words. All these aspects have to be taken into consideration, and not just pieces. Okay, first part only, or second part only, and third part only. No, you should take all these three things and then put it together and then understand it fully, and then only you are a karma yogi. So the choice of action. Let's try to understand what is the choice of action that you have when you come up with the execution of a duty. What are your choices? What are your choices when you are confronted with the situation where you need to execute your duties? There are only three ways in which you can do. One, the first obvious is to do that work. The second is not to do that work, obviously. Second is the opposite of that. Don't do it. You just shun your duties. Second. But there is also a third. What is that? That third is to do something different. Without doing your duties, do something else. So three things. Can you say any other option is there? There is no other option. Three things. Do the work, not do the work, or do something different. So what you have to do when faced with an opportunity to carry out your duty, or when you are compelled to do your duty, the only thing, the power that you can bring forth from within yourself is to make your choice out of these three. Which one should I take out of these three options? That power to decide is your choice. And nobody else can choose that for you. Only you can do that. That is the only, out of these three things, selecting one is the only option that you have. And that only you can do it. Nobody else can do it. That is one thing. Then, now, what are the limits of your control you exercise on this stage when you are supposed to do your duty? Your choice, therefore, you see there are three choices. One, do the work, not do the work, or do something different. In all these three things, you are doing some action, isn't it? You are acting upon it. So your choice is only in those actions. But what comes out if you do the work? Or what comes out if you do not do the work? And what comes if you do something else? It's not in your control. You may do something different. You wanted to achieve something, and therefore you must do this. But you did not do that. You did something else. You cannot expect the same results to come, isn't it? Something will come, but that is not in your control. The results are decided by, there is a natural rule or law, that is the universal law, Ishvara. The aspect of Ishvara comes into play. What is that aspect of Ishvara that will play there? It is the cause-effect relationship. Cause-effect relationship is the power of the universe. That is why there are three things: space, time, and causation. Causation. Cause-effect relationship is called as causation in one single word. So the results are decided by causation, the law of causation or cause-effect relationship. You have control only on the cause. That is the effect. When if it has to come, there has to be a cause. And the cause is your action, choice of action. And that is the only thing you have control. The result, the effect will come naturally. Your choice ends in that action. When you do the action, when you do not do your duty, like for example, you have three choices: do the work, do not do the work, do something different. Let's say you decided you chose not to do something. After that, what comes? You don't have any control. And you have to better abide by that result. That is what we need to understand, the limit of your control. Now, the third aspect of this sloka is that results should not be the motivation, but higher goals. No, the immediate results of doing something, that is cause-effect relationship, will bring it. So don't be worried about that result. Only worry about the overall goals, the purpose of life. Purpose of living should only be the guiding factor. Then the third is never be inactive. So there is no point in not doing anything, because not doing anything is also action, and that will bring in some result, the effect. So therefore, not doing is not an option, should not be an option. So do your duty, and that is your only right. Doing your duty is only right. You should not be run by likes and dislikes, etc., but do your duty. What you must do, you must. And finally, you have to understand that because of all this, we have to understand that all of us are qualified to act. There is nobody unqualified to act upon the duties that you have to perform. Every one of them. If you are faced with doing something, a duty, then that means you are qualified to do that work. So you are qualified only to act. But there is another aspect: you are not qualified to judge the result. You are not qualified to judge the result. A simple example, for example, a school teacher and the student. The student has got the duty to write the exam. But he cannot say that he has the right to decide how much mark he should get. It is the teacher's duty and not the student's duty. Something like that. It's a simple analogy. That's all. So you are qualified only to act and not to evaluate the results. The evaluation of the result is the duty of someone else. So these 6 perspectives should be very clear when you understand Karma Yoga. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma baleshu katha janaha. That sloga, that famous sloga, should be understood in all its perspectives for you to really grapple with your duties, your karma, and its cause-effect relationship. Karma, the action with its cause-effect relationships, is called as karma. Action that you perform is not just, that is only one aspect of karma. Actions is only one aspect of karma, and the cause-effect relationship that brings in the results is tied to that action, and therefore that is karma. And then 248 says equanimity of mind is karma yoga. Equanimity of mind. Now, when you do this, automatically, when you are engaged in karma like this, it implies one thing, which is your balance of mind. You can become better and better as a karma yogi when your mind becomes calm and balanced. That is, you do not unduly get carried away by the results or the hopes and the despairs of the result, likes and dislikes for the work and its results, etc. So that balancing of likes and dislikes, hope and despair, is what is called as equanimity. And that equanimity of mind is called as karma yoga. 248 describes that, defines that. And then Krishna goes on to say that if you work that way, the results are going to be excellent, and concludes in 250 that the dexterity of skills is karma yoga. He says that ultimately engaging in such action, becoming more and more refined, becoming perfect, is basically what called as acquiring dexterity in doing things, skills, extreme skills in what you are doing, dexterity of skills. That ultimately is the effect of karma yoga. And that dexterity, you will see, is therefore coming to you from the state of equanimity of your mind. So 250 summarizes that. Dexterity of skills is karma yoga, and it is attained through equanimity of mind. So what does this mean to you as in a practical way? This karma concept tells us that every action has got a reaction. That is what even our science also talks about. Every action has a reaction. So whatever you do, in whatever mental attitude with you have, if you do something, some results are definitely going to come. Even if you work selfishly, full of selfishness and ego, you will get results for that. But what Krishna is now saying is that the actions with supreme motivations will be giving you better results than if you are working with selfish motivations. Actions with supreme motivations will give you definitely much better results than selfish motivations. And then again, he adds that to that. What is that? Actions with supreme motivations and yajna bhava and prasada bhava, the accept and move forward, abundant positivity, will give you superior results. And ultimately says that actions with supreme motivations and abundance, positivity, combined with the practices that will enhance your skills and dexterity incrementally, will give you star results. That is the top performer. The top performer, therefore, will have to combine these motivations, negative positivity, and the dexterity of skills, the attitude for increasing the dexterity of your skills. If you combine these things together, it will give you star results. This is basically the summary, which is what we are going to see in chapter 3 onwards in more detail. How to do that. So this is in second chapter, the few slokas, about 15 slokas or so, is talking about these things. And I have summarized that. And the most important of which, 3 of them have been described here. But these 3 slokas encapsulate the message of the summary of Bhagavad-Gita, Karma Yoga. And that is basically what is described here. So, Karmanyevadhikaraste mahabaleshu kathajanaha ma karmabalahe durbur mate sangotsa akarmani. Therefore, not be inactive. And then 48 says, Yogastha kuri karmani sangam tektva dhananjaya siddhya siddho samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Samatvam, equanimity of mind, yoga, is called as karma yoga. Yoga uchyate. It is said that it is the equanimity of mind that is called karma yoga. And then 50, which we discussed now, buddhi yukto jahadiga ube sugrida diskrida, and finally tasmat yoga yudyasya. Therefore, go and fight. Karmasu kaushalam, because dexterity, kaushalam, dexterity of skills is karma. Karmasu kaushalam. Dexterity of skills is karma yoga. That is how it is defined. So, equanimity of mind is karma yoga. That is, now let us look at that a little bit in detail. More and more processes will be described in 3, 4, and 5. But here it is a summary. What does Krishna talk about? Krishna is saying that most of us are powered by ego, selfishness. The mind, the body, mind, and the intellect, all are powered by selfishness. When the body is going after selfishness, or selfishness is powering your body, let us say that way, let us look at it that way. When selfishness is powering your body, let's say body, what happens is you are going after lust and indulgences, overindulgences, pleasures. The moment you go after pleasures, you can be sure that it is your ego driving your body, selfishness driving your body, or ego driving the mind. What are the symptoms? The symptoms are greed, jealousy, and envy. If you are greedy, if you are jealous, you are envious of others, that means selfishness is driving your mind. How can you detect if the intellect is driven by selfishness? It is arrogance and conceit. If you are driven, your intellect is driven by ego, then you will exhibit arrogance and conceit. So, lust, indulgences, body is driven by ego. Greed, jealousy, and envy, your emotions are driven by ego. Arrogance and conceit, your intellect, ideas, your thoughts are powered by arrogance and conceit. Kind of superiority complexes and things like that. And if, therefore, when you are totally driven by ego, what happens is fleeting happiness. Yes, Karma Yoga says, Karma theory says, you can still achieve happiness by getting some results that is in tune with your requirements. You got pleasures, or you defeated somebody with your envy or jealousy. You became better, and then what happens is jealousy will keep on increasing. That is another thing. That's and arrogance, conceit, etc. Superiority complex, putting down others. You will get some happiness, but that happiness, the karma concept says, it is of fleeting nature. It will not last long. And the satisfaction that it gives you is also fleeting, transient. It is egocentric self-satisfaction. Self-satisfaction is about the satisfying of your body, mind, and intellect. That is why I've written self in small letters there in the diagram. Self-satisfaction. A small self-satisfaction. Okay. So fleeting happiness, egocentric self-satisfaction results from ego driving your body, mind, and intellect. And ultimately, with all this, what is happening is you will develop not a dexterity of skills, but suboptimal skills only. Because if you set somebody else as your yardstick, as a competitor, what happens is by reaching that point, you will become happy and then you will leave off. You will flag off. And therefore, you will not reach your peak. Suboptimal skills. Now, your mind will always be in the swing of hope and despair. And your intellect is now powered only by selfish motivations. Motivation to to make happy the mind, intellect, and the body. Selfish motivation. So this is basically the law of karma, the karma, pure karma. The karma is defined like this in the transactional world. So that because ego, if you look at the bottom of this diagram, ego, that is splitting the self. In the sense, ego is putting a barrier with the self. And therefore, we forget the self and we exist in this world doing nonsensical actions, which are suboptimal, full of hope and despair, and powered by selfish motivations. But Karma Yoga means self taking center stage. And we know what self is. We have already described that in the previous, last class, as well as in the first half of this session. The body, mind, and intellect, fully powered by the self. Self is driving the motivations of the body, mind, and intellect. What is happening is the body is now focused on discipline and structure. Mind is inspired and devoted. Devotion is driving the mind. Similarly, discriminative, dispassionate intellect, Viveka, is running your intellect. Viveka and Vairagya are running your intellect. This Viveka and Vairagya are the man-lion powers within us, the Narasimha within us. That is driving us. And therefore, you are driven to lasting happiness, bliss, and beatitude, as well as capital self-satisfaction, Atma-tripti, joys of the inner self, is the result. Driving you to dexterity of skills, equanimity of mind, and supreme motivations. Karma Yoga, that is Karma Yoga. This is basically what Krishna was summarizing in the second chapter, that Karma Yoga is dexterity of skills, equanimity of mind, and supreme motivations. 247, 248, and 250. Three verses, Krishna was summarizing the top part of it, Karma Yoga. I was looking at the bottom half, the under the hood. Krishna, in the second chapter, just describes it in 3 verses. Let us look at the bonnet, open the bonnet and see what is inside. This is what you see inside for that Karma Yoga that has been described in 3 verses. And that is basically the focus, the subject matter of chapter 3 to chapter 6. This is the subject matter of chapter 6. Okay, so we are not yet there. We are only in the second chapter and we are seeing this summary. Okay, so some practical examples for that joy of the self that you get, self-satisfaction, atma-tripti that you get, is basically what is described there, which is actually, I am summarizing that again in practical terms for this session now. The right side actually gives the same examples on the left side. Practical, the joy of deriving, loving the work that you must do, the karmanyavadhikaraste mahabaleshu kadajanaha, described these things, doing the duty very well, meticulously, with a sense of duty, with priority, and finishing it well with self-effort, and all those qualities. Those qualities, if you look at it, to make it very easy, we can summarize those things into 4 practical things. What is that? Quality, utility, precision, and accuracy. These are the 4 watchwords of Atma-tripti. Should be the watchwords for Atma-tripti if you want to achieve dexterity of skills and equanimity of mind, and therefore become a karma yogi in the practical world. These are value systems that we need to imbibe. Selfless value systems, quality. You should not be looking at other people or gains from other things, physical gains from other things, or competing with other people. Instead, your motivation should be the quality of what you are doing. If you are fully powered by the motivations to enjoy the happiness derived from doing quality work, that is what perfection is all about. The joy of quality. Similarly, the joy of utility. Okay, with quality you do why? Prioritizing things to do and accomplishing those priorities so that the effect of what you want to do, the results or the impact of your work, the sphere of implications, the impact of your work are maximized So it could be in scope, it could be in doing things more efficiently and easily, more usable and more benefit to others, and also adapting situations, adaptability. This is practical. This is now bringing Bhagavad Gita into our practical sphere of living in this world. So the things that you should do is joy quality. Quality, the first one, better, faster, larger, loftier, tougher, softer, subtler. Or utility, scope, easiness, usability, and adaptability. And then the third is precision. The results that come from your work, good, the goal and the processes that are driving your actions to meet quality, quantity, timeliness, thus improving efficiencies and satisfying expectations, reliability. It is not that, working in an organization, let's say, you do whatever you like. It's not that. You should work so that you satisfy the expectations of others, your stakeholders. So that way, translate that. That is precisely meeting the requirements, precisely meeting the expectations, precisely meeting the quality, precisely meeting the quantity, precisely meeting the timeliness, etc. That is what is called as precision. And repeatedly doing that in quality, utility, and precision, whatever you do, always, it is not that I will do certain things with quality and some of the other things without any precision, etc. No, everything you do that way and you derive the happiness of actually meeting that is basically the joy of accuracy. Certain people, some people, when they are fully responsible for a project, they will do it, they will take care. But when they are working in a team and not the project lead, they will do, it is not my problem. I'm not the project manager, project leader. Therefore, let somebody else look after these things. And I will do it in my fashion or my way, my slowly, etc. I don't care. But when I am having the responsibility, my attitude is different. That difference in attitude should not be there. That is Karma Yoga. Consistency and persistence in delighting stakeholders, come what may, whatever your position is. That is the joy of accuracy. So these things, if you can imbibe this, what I am calling as the Kupa attitude. The Kupa attitude is practical Karma Yoga in this world. In the practical world of transactions, in the material world, if you want to achieve what Bhagavad Gita is teaching you, then you have to follow these things. That is, then you are driven by Atma Tripti in meeting the Kupa at strategies. That is what is called as Karma Yoga. That is when you are driven by the self of the purpose. Self, the purpose of what you are doing. The purpose is the self. The purpose is the self. So we need to understand that. So we are talking about, Karma Yoga is talking about your self-effort with intrinsic motivations, with right attitudes in a state of meditative flow. Is basically what you should do. The intrinsic motivations or selflessness powering your duties and attitudes to make you become a follower, in the sense, follower to the purpose. And following the purpose of organizations, purpose of teams, purpose of projects, etc. Following the purpose. That is what followership is. That is what is called as self-leadership. That is, you become the leader of your own, of your own volition. You are not being forced to do things. You are taking leadership in your hands. That is what is called as followership. So understand what duties are and do accordingly. And bring out your attitudes. When challenges come, it is your attitude to meet the challenge that matters. Even if you are defeated, even if you fail, your attitude will take you through. That is what Karma Yoga promises you. So, practical summary of Karma Yoga in second chapter is this. And, sorry, The next is that attachment or selfish desires leads to brooding. Brooding, in the sense, if you have selfish desires and it is not met, if you don't gain what your selfish desires were after, then you will become frustrated and angry. And therefore, anger comes. When anger comes, your rational thinking is eroded, delusion occurs, and you are bewildered. When you are bewildered, your rational thinking is not right. What happens is your reasoning falters and you deviate from the right path. So that's basically what this second chapter finishes off with. It says that selfish desires comes because of craving. Craving for something or brooding for something happens because of the selfish desires. The selfish desires lead you to action, and the action, if it doesn't meet your desires, or even if desires are met, you will want more, and the result leads to more craving, and there is a loop, the bondage. This loop is called as the bondage of selfishness. That is how the people get, completely enmeshed in selfishness. This bondage of selfishness happens because of that, cravings. So what you should do is, for reducing selfishness, there is only one way: not to act upon it. Abstinence, that is called as abstinence. One of the completely giving up the actions, selfish actions, is called as abstinence. That is called as suppression. That is called as suppression of selfish desires. If without acting upon it, you have the desires, selfish desires, but you don't act upon it. That's all. That is suppression. Now, Gita is not telling you to do that. What Gita is telling is, because this suppression, what happens is, it can create problems in your mind, and it can explode at some unexpected times. And then the results will be more catastrophic. So Bhagavad-Gita is telling you something else. What is that? That desires, selfish desires, should be changed to selfless desires. How? Being motivated purely by the joys of the self, the Kupa strategies we talked about, Kupa motivations. If you are in all your actions, Kupa motivations, practice it regularly, consistently, persistently, and then your mind becomes filled with devotion. And that way, your selfish desires will slowly get evaporated, sublimated, like camphor. Sublimation of selfish desires. Sublimation of selfish desires by the knowledge of the self. And the motivations, that results in the motivations for the joys of the self, is basically what Gita is telling you to do. So it is not about not acting, keeping quiet, suppressing selfishness, but about changing selfishness to selflessness through bringing in the Kupa motivations, slowly but steadily, in small doses initially, maybe, and then over a period of time, practically doing it every time consistently and persistently. You doing it will help you to become sublimated of selfish desires. So sublimating selfish cravings is basically what 59th verse of the second chapter is advocating, the policy of sublimating selfish desires. Again, these are all summaries in the second chapter. More details will be worked out in subsequent chapters, which we have also seen in the previous run, but we will be seeing it again. So this is, in summary, sublimating selfish cravings is the ultimate purpose of Karma Yoga, and not suppressing selfishness. What stands in the way is explained next. So that is where the next 61 verses, 62 and 63, the 4 verses talk about Brooding about sense objects creates attachment to them. From attachment, selfish desires come. And unfulfilled desires, selfish desires, result in anger. Anger causes delusion. Delusion helps us to forget past knowledge only. That is all. It kills our knowledge or makes us forget the knowledge, which means intellect is destroyed, and intellect destroys man. When intellect is destroyed, man perishes. That is what ultimately happens if we fall to selfishness. So don't do that, is basically what Gita is telling us. Therefore, peace and tranquility can only be attained. Equanimity of mind can only be attained if you are in control of your senses and engage in the affairs of the world without likes and dislikes. That's the message, summary message. Control of senses, no likes and dislikes. So, body pleasures controlled, likes and dislikes controlled, reaches you to peace and tranquility in mind. And what does it do? It helps to free us from grief and gives us steady intellect, equipoise of the intellect, balanced intellect is given. This steadiness is basically what gives us joys of the self and a focused state of mind. When the mind, when the intellect is steady, we are rooted to the self and a state of flow is achieved, which gives again, so it actually brings us back to peace of mind, and that peace of mind is again, doing the studying the intellect more, and it is a cycle. It is a loop which helps you to become perfect as time goes on. Okay, so now on the other hand, what happens is this, shown in red: sense perception, control of senses. Instead of that, you are going after the senses. Sense organs are ruling you. Then grief results. Whereas in the previous case, your intellect is now controlling you. And, there are people who are run by the BMI, people of unsteady intellect. They are ignorant of the self. They are ignorant of the self means they don't understand what self is. They are completely situated in the body, mind, and intellect. So the ignorance of the self is basically what it means. It is that you are in the darkness, in the dark about the joys of the self. And situated in the body, mind, and intellect means you are in the light of pleasures of the BMI, senses. So BMI gives you happiness. Pleasures give you happiness. So you are actually enjoying the pleasures in the light of the pleasures. Ignorance of the self, therefore darkness of the self. That is what normal people are, average people are. Krishna says, instead, powered by the self, persons of steady intellect will be situated in the self. Therefore, they are in the light of the joys of the self and free from the body, mind, and intellect, which means they are in the darkness about the pleasures of the body, mind, and intellect. They are in the dark of the pleasures of the body, mind, and intellect. So, this is very beautifully analogically captured in verse 69 of the second chapter. I will read out what it says. It says, the state which is night for everyone, the average, is the state of wakefulness to the man of steadied intellect. And that which is waking state for the selfish-minded is the night for those who revel in the joys of the self. That is for people who are selfish. The light is what? Light is the pleasures. Because they understand the pleasures and they are going after the pleasure. They see pleasures and they go after the pleasures, means they are in the light of pleasures. But the people of studied intellect, what happens for them? This light, this pleasures of the senses, they don't see. So they are the darkness of the pleasures. They are the dark as far as pleasures of the senses are concerned. So that is the reverse logic, that relationship that Krishna has enumerated here. The state which is night for everyone, that is the average people, is the state of wakefulness to the man of studied intellect. And that which is the waking state of the selfish minded is night for those who revel in the joys of the self. Ya nisha sarva bhuthanam, night, nisha, night, the state of night. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagrati sanyami. Yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. That is the statement. That is the Sanskrit verse, and the meaning of which I just described here, which is the joys of the self that lights up the person of perfection is never understood by the average people. The pleasures that light up the average people will never excite the perfect. Okay, that is what is described poetically in one statement, which is one verse, which is 269. So, what does it mean? It means in practical terms. Now I will talk in our practical terms. Let us look at it. It's like this. Star perspective. What is that? Challenges are opportunities for the star performer. Challenges open opportunities for the star performer. But for the average performer, what happens? Challenges become problems and they give up. That is what Gita is telling us. Being in the comfort zone, some people, they go into comfort zone. Being in the comfort zone is challenge for the star performer. The average performer is happy to be in the comfort zone. So, the average performer find light in the comfort zone and is happy. Whereas the star performer, if they are in the comfort zone, they get agitated and they will start wanting to do more. They find opportunities to do more. When you become actually, start feeling that you are not learning anything or you are not doing anything, that is the time when you should start getting worked up to actually start learning new things and break open the comfort zone and then go expand. Whereas the average performers, they become happy and they said, okay, no, there is no problem. I have learned everything I'm doing. I'm happy now at work. The moment you feel you are happy and easy at work, that is the time when you should actually start understanding, no, I have more powers within me. The self is infinite. I need to break free from this. That is when you understand the self. So that is a practical message that Gita is trying to give. The state which is night for everyone, the state which is a challenge for everyone, is a state of, that becomes the opportunity, the wakefulness to the man of perfection, stardom, the star performer, and vice versa. So, star performer versus average performer has been identified there in the language of Karma Yoga. And that is basically what we should understand. So with that, I think we will stop this for today's class. The 6 verses are complete. What is self? Work selflessly, with equanimity of mind and dexterity of skills. Selfish desires are the problem for your anger, and anger leads you to delusion. Therefore, don't do that. Further Karma Yoga, we'll get into 3rd, 4th, and 5th chapters, 6th chapters as we move ahead. We will stop at this point and we will start with Q&A. But before that, let's actually play the concluding mantra. Oops. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay. Before we go to the question answer session, Anandji, if you can